Iran or people in Australia. Last week, you might remember, we celebrated that it was NAIDOC week. Does that mean we forget about it for the rest of the year? No, it means that we can appreciate that elders in the past and in the present pass on what they share. And so as we meet on this dark country, we acknowledge that there is a continuing culture that is rich, that has its knowledge of God, that God lived with people here for thousands and thousands of years before this name of Jesus came. And yet now we have a greater fullness that we share with our Aboriginal and Islander brothers and sisters to walk and serve this same God whom we know, and we enrich one another through that shared experience. So we just want to acknowledge that today. How we pass on stuff is what we've been thinking about in mission, isn't it? God is passing on through the generations of knowledge of himself and what he's doing in the world, and we have the privilege of participating in that mission with him to reflect that care that he himself has for all that he's made. How we do that, the words that we say and the lives that we live need to match. The word we use for that is integrity. Some of you, I know, are engineers. I was talking to some engineers through the week. And they know when things are made well, when things fit together as they should, there is structural integrity. That the thing that has been designed fulfills its purpose, that it functions well. But sometimes we can begin with the hope of living for Jesus, and then things go wrong. That we lose some of that integrity and it doesn't work. We know sadly that when that happens, the name of Jesus is brought low by the people who proclaim him. That the witness of the church is not what it should be, and it has not been through the centuries all that it should be. But we also can know that in ourselves. And perhaps you've experienced that you say, yes, I want to live for this Jesus, but it's just not working for me. It's not fulfilling the hopes that I once had. That it's dysfunctional in some way. What is breaking down that integrity between my being, who I am, and my doing? How do I reconcile those two things together? Very briefly this morning, we're just going to reflect on some words from Jesus that gives us great direction in knowing what to do. How we picture that new life we've seen in the symbol of baptism. But Jesus spoke in pictures. Again, I was talking to some Iranian friends who I think in their culture speak in pictures. If you know Iranians, that's how they do it. It's beautiful. Jesus, I think, shared that culture. He spoke in pictures. And he used things from history that had rich, deep meaning to convey new truth to people that were lodged in our hearts and minds. And when Jesus spoke about the relationship of our being and our doing, of living as God's people, fruitfully in the world, he used an old image of the vine. In the First Testament, God's people Israel are described as a plant planted by God who are to bear fruit for him in the world, to achieve his purposes, to extend his mission. That's why he chose Israel. Of all the nations, he chose this no nation and made them a great nation, that they would bless all the nations of the earth. But things didn't go well. The vine was not fruitful. It did not flourish. And so the prophets spoke of a day when God at last would come and bring new life to his people. And Jesus said an amazing thing, a frightening thing, an astounding thing, but also a thing full of promise. This is what he said. Can you read these words with me from John's Gospel? Remain joined to me, just as I also remain joined to you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain joined to the vine. In the same way, you can't bear fruit unless you remain joined to me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain joined to me and I to you, you will bear a lot of fruit. You can't do anything without me. This is the picture of integrity that Jesus gave for his people. And he made a bold claim, and he said, I am the new vine. And God's people now are all located within me. They are branches. God's Israel has been renewed. And anyone from any background can come and belong to this people of God. And you will be fruitful if you remain in me and my life remains in you. When you live in this dependence upon me, you will see fruit. You will see fruit in a new character, that you will reflect my character. And you will see fruit in new conduct, how you treat one another. You will love as I have loved you, as we just heard in Asapha's testimony. And you will see new purpose in your living, that you will do the good works of God. You will be his instrument in the world to further his mission. Just as I have worked, so you too will work. You will be salt and light. You will bring the knowledge of God to all creation. If you remain in me. And when the integrity breaks down, I think this should be our first thinking. How am I living with this Jesus? Is it a relationship that is dependent upon him? If we are to be fruitful in living lives in mission for God, it will only happen and we will only be effective when we are dependent upon this Jesus, when we maintain that relationship. And I know in my own life, when things are not so fruitful, when things shrivel and dry up, it's because I'm losing this connection. Jesus becomes distant to me, and I get on and get distracted by other things, and then I think, I've lost it. Where has it gone? Come back and abide, remain, keep joined with me, and I will be in you, is the promise of Jesus. When there is a lack of integrity, we say that people are fake or false. And that's the tragedy of church history, isn't it? That people can say, yes, I follow Jesus, and smile, but the life doesn't communicate that. Hypocrisy, a wearing of a mask, fake, false. And that's always the temptation for us. Because once you've been a Christian a little while, you sort of know what you're supposed to do, and you can live by those expectations of, this is the right way to behave. But inside it's empty. It's not alive. It's not vibrant. It's life by numbers. And that's not the life that God calls us to. And so, if that's you today, don't despair. Come back to the vine and say, I want this life in me. Because the promise of Jesus is always, yes, come and abide in me. But beware that we can fall into the trap of being false or being fake. We've been mostly looking through this series at the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus goes up on a mountain and he says, I want to tell you the way I want you to live with and for God. I am giving you instructions about what it means to be God's people. I am shaping you. I'm guiding the growth of the vine. And I'm describing different behaviours, different characters that will reflect my life in you as you live as my people. The Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus speaks in the sermon about the danger of falsehood. Falsehood in ourselves and falsehood amongst others. Because other people would divert us from following this way of Jesus. They would make an institution, a religion of this relationship. And so Jesus says these words. Can you read those words up there, or are they too small? Let's read it together. They're too small on the back screen for me. Jesus says, watch out for false prophets. They come to you pretending to be sheep, but on the inside they are hungry wolves. You can tell each tree by its fruit. Do people pick grapes from bushes? Do they pick figs from thorns? In the same way, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree can't bear bad fruit, and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down. It is thrown into the fire. You can tell each tree by its fruit. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who do what my Father in heaven wants will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did Didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we drive out demons in your name? Didn't we do many miracles in your name? Then I will tell them clearly, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who do evil. I find these confronting words. People who can do amazing things in the name of Jesus, and yet he never knows them. They have no connection to him. And I say to myself, John, don't become that person. Oh, I'm doing all those things for Jesus. But when he said, well, I never knew you. You have no connection to me. You just use my name. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who what? Do the will of my Father. Who hear my words and obey them. That's where the Sermon on the Mount ends. You know, that parable of building your house on the sand of the rock. What's the difference? It's those who hear these words and do them. Put them into life. And it's that behaviour then that shapes our character. Our doing shapes our being, and our being causes our doing. And it's the integrity, the virtuous circle. That's what Jesus is picturing. And he uses the same image of fruit. You know what someone is on the inside by looking on the outside. But we do the outside because of the inside, and by doing that, it shapes and continues to shape who we are on the inside. Does that make sense? Wonderful picture. But the challenge is, well, do I do it? Do I take these words? Do I trust these words of Jesus? Do I have faith in him? Faith enough to obey. Faith is allegiance. It's saying, yes, I commit, I trust, I hope in you, therefore I will obey. Therefore faith works. Faith works by love. This life you're calling me to, Jesus, is the best life I could ever live, the most fruitful life. And so I'll do it. And it's a good life. That's the invitation of Jesus to us. Come and abide in me, remain in me, keep joined to me, and you'll bear much fruit. You'll live a worthwhile life, in God's estimation. Will we do what he says? That's how we live in mission. God cares for all people, and so our mission is global. 6 weeks ago we learned that. 5 weeks ago we saw that God cares for all things. So mission is holistic. It's the whole of life. Everything that God has made, that is to reflect that Jesus is Lord. In every aspect of your living and doing, our caring for one another. God cares for all time. So our mission is now. Not just the future, not just the hope of the heavenly kingdom, but today. I live for Jesus today. God cares for all efforts. So we help one another. We can't do everything. Our mission is shared. We partner with one another, like Pip and Pern in Cambodia. God cares for all relationships. This good news that we bring is not forced, as we heard. It's a choice that people can make. God gives that freedom. And so when we speak about Jesus, it's always conversation. It's always dialogue. We've got something to share, which is good, but we also must listen and be enriched by the lives of others. And finally, God cares for all integrity, how things fit together. So our mission is dependent upon him. That's what needs to fit. We need to fit in his way of doing and being. And then we will be fruitful. That's enough from me today. As you go away from this series, hopefully something has spoken to you. There are still a few little booklets here if you can get one that you can do some homework and read backwards. Come and take one if you haven't got one, because otherwise they're just going to the bin, so it's a waste. The last activity for this week is to think back. Is there something that you can do from what you've heard over these 6 weeks that will help you in your fruitfulness? For tomorrow, for next week, for next year, and onwards in your life. What is something that you can do? Maybe it's thinking, how do I enact this teaching from Jesus? Or how do I learn more about what it is that he wants me to do? Or it might be something else. How do I bring that in my family, in my work, in my friendships? Our mission is active, and so we need to be active in response to the word of Jesus. One of the ways that we are doing that is sharing, being fruitful in what God has given to us. We've been raising funds and Vanessa mentioned that at the start. I haven't got the up-to-date figures, I'm sad to say, but I will bring them to you as soon as I have them. But we've been raising funds, and you can still give, to Crimson Worship in the Highlands. Made some news stories this week, if you know the country. People are leaving that country. It has the reputation of being the happiest nation on earth. Maybe you know, can make the connection. But people are leaving in droves, young people, because they're not happy. So we have some friends living there who are trying to bring this news of Jesus, to bring joy, to bring life. And they're doing that in song. So that's what this is raising money for, Crimson Worship. You can give to that any time, but have a look on e-news or the website. Or the other project was the matching grant appeal, which is finished because the financial year is finished. You can give to Baptist World Aid at any time of the year though. So you can go online to do that. You just have missed out the multiplier effect. I'm sure they'll do it again. It's always tax deductible. Thanks, Chris. So you can plan ahead. That's what we do to be fruitful. It's just one action, one response that we make as we live dependent on Jesus. On our website, through access through the news, you can find some discussion questions that will help you tease out what we've looked at today. Our life groups will consider these, so they go out. We write questions every week. You can access them. Very simple questions. Focused not on comprehension, but on response. Hopefully what we say on Sunday makes enough sense that you've got the facts to deal with. But then what do you do with these words? That's what they're practical questions. What do I do? So you'll find those there.